everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cold Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Jim Fitzgerald, also known as Fitz. Fitz, how are you tonight?
I'm okay, Ray, and I think we would call this a special episode, just 10 to 15 minutes here, talking about what you and I both went in other podcast and media outlets last week regarding Nancy Guthrie and some of the so called newer developments in that, mostly to do with some of the old communications, some allegedly new, the TMZ. So we were asked a bunch of questions separately last week, Ray. Maybe we can cover a few of them now. But yeah, obviously, everyone, Nancy Guthrie's been missing for, I think, almost 5 months now. I think Wednesday or so, it'll be
Right.
5 months. And really, the investigation, at least as far as the public knows, has gone nowhere. And it seems some information has been released from some of these notes. You can see it in the media. We're not going to go word for word through them. The implication is, and I'm saying notes. I'm going to call them communications. I think they were emails. There was a note at the JonBenét Ramsey case that was bogus. The whole thing was bogus. The girl was never kidnapped. She was murdered in the house. So that was a note written on a piece of paper. Earlier kidnappings, Lindbergh, there was an actual piece of paper in the bedroom when the baby was stolen in 1932. More nowadays, you see, or at least in this case, because kidnappings for profit are so astronomically rare in this country. Um, if there is some kind of a demand, it'll be telephone or a digital email, something like that. So no note with this on paper. But so lately it's come out that Mrs. Guthrie is buried with nature. I read that a few times and said, okay, when you think about it, everyone is buried with nature. You may be in a regular cemetery plot. You may end up being above ground, facility somewhere. You may be cut up by a criminal and deposited somewhere, even in the water, dumped in the water somewhere. Uh, but you're still with nature. So whoever is writing this, buried with nature, it's not really telling us anything. And then Ray, the other part, I'll turn this over to you. In so many words, she's not with us anymore, and it was not intentional. I have some thoughts, but I'll let you pick up on wherever you want to go with at least these words that were released last week.
Jim, as I look at the phrase you just mentioned, buried in nature,
With
it's
nature, it's a different with
it's
nature,
buried in
not
nature.
in.
With nature. Okay,
Yes,
buried with nature.
interesting phraseology, which a forensic linguist would find interesting with some
Correct.
known writings of a suspect. Continue.
But I think that's abstract. It's almost poetic. To me, it raises, I don't know if you agree with this, a couple different possibilities. I think the offender or offenders in this case are trying to soften it by using this abstract language to kind of psychologically distance themselves from the acts that actually happen. I mean, most people, Jim, when you say buried with nature, it removes the harsh reality of death, burial, decomposition, concealment. It reframes burial as something that's peaceful and organic. It could really suggest that they're trying to reduce their own guilt by romanticizing what happened. I mean, I, you know, you might even say when they talk like that, are they educated? Are they well read? It doesn't sound like it's written by someone that's trying to sound compassionate. I think it's someone trying to manipulate the actual perception of what actually happened. I mean, and then you mentioned the other thing, her death was not intentional. I think that's another major indicator here. That phrase to me raises suspicion because to me it sounds defensive. I mean, usually when you're disclosing something and you're being truthful, you're telling me what happened, you're telling me where it happened, when it happened, and who was involved. Here, when you're looking at something that's being deceptive, they're minimizing their responsibility. They're reducing, and I think this is a big word here, intent. What's their intent here? and they're trying to control the interpretation. I think this is about a little bit more about control here, where I think the writer seems concerned with one main issue here, and that's intent. And I think that might tell us something. Um, if it was a genuine accidental death, I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of panic going on here. If this is actually from these individuals, I think when you have things in any type of criminal act, especially an abduction, it's very common for something to go wrong here. The assault to escalate. You have a lethal injury that may have occurred or something of that nature. The other thing too, Jim, is that I think they may be telling us we didn't mean for this to happen. It was an accident, even when the evidence suggests that the violence was intentional, as we both know.
Well, as profilers, as behavioralists, Ray, that's what we would do around the table and consultations, throw out different scenarios. And we owe it to our audience, and just like in the old days, to our fellow agents or investigators who are in the consultation room with us to lay out all the scenarios. You laid out one. I think these are opportunists. Whoever wrote these are not involved in the abduction. And notice I'm not using the word kidnapping. I don't think it ever was a kidnapping for ransom. Again, why not leave a note in the room like in other cases? And let's not forget, tied in with this message is also the fact that there's some kind of a cell phone hidden somewhere with pictures of, quote, Nancy's last day alive. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's the basic words. And they will provide the names, addresses, and ages of this person who's writing this letter, this communication, to be consistent here, has this information, or do they? And all they want is one Bitcoin, which as of Friday afternoon was worth around $62,000 U.S. currency. So think about it, Ray. And this goes to TMZ. I mean, why not go right to the Guthrie family, or at least the sheriff's department or the FBI, where this is going to be kept intact? They know the TMZ folks are eventually going to go public. They seem to those TMZ claims they're working with law enforcement and don't put anything out, but they're chomping at the bit, and they finally did put stuff out. But think about this, Ray. So allegedly there are two kidnappers, according to this communication, which I think is also tied in with buried in nature, not intentional. And this person, for $62,000, not a whole lot by today's standards, is willing to give up names and addresses and age. I don't think you have to throw that in. If you have names and addresses, that would be easy to figure out. But look, what kind of a high risk notification is this to TMZ that the kidnappers will have to ask themselves, who the heck among us, who knows us, that could give this information over? Well, we've already killed this woman, intentionally or not, buried wherever with nature. We better bury this other person with nature, because he or she is about to give us up for a lousy 62 grand and some alleged buried cell phone. I'm sure a burner phone of some sort. My point to all this is it's BS. It's a hoax. This is not happening. Why someone is putting this out, I'm not sure. Do they hope to make some quick bucks? They're not asking for 40 million or 20 million or whatever the original 4 million was. They're asking for $62,000, not a whole lot. Be a quick payday. Wouldn't be a bad payday for just putting a few emails together and claiming to have this stuff. And I guarantee you, there'd be no phone anyone would find anywhere with Nancy's last day on it. So Ray, I understand what you're saying, and we like to play devil's advocate on both ends. But I'll say this too: the investigators have to follow through on this. You and I have been in cases back in the day where things seem like really tenuous and off the chart, but you know what? either we're following up on it or we send out leads for other agents or investigators to do so. So, of course, follow up on this. Look at all the computer, work they can do to find out the provenance of these messages, and then work it from there. But I would be very surprised. I just hope there's not more than a few agents working these leads out and being taken away from actually trying to identify through other leads and investigative techniques, who was or who were the culprits, and of course, locate Mrs. Guthrie somewhere out there after having been taken by this abductor way back on February 1st.
Jim, I kind of agree with you. I do think it's a hoax. I don't think it's real. I think if in fact, I say those other things because I think it's important to not lose sight of the potential for that to occur. But I think when you really get down to this, if I'm the individual and if I have information and cell phone footage of a video of the main character who was involved in this and Nancy Guthrie on the last days of her life, and I'm trying to sell this to law enforcement, why don't I just come forward? I can't come forward maybe because I was involved to a certain extent with this, or I'm not legitimate at all. I mean, look, to me, this newest note appears less like a legitimate ransom communication and more like an attempt to control the narrative. I think I think it may be a test to law enforcement. And the other thing, it comes on the back end of the FBI releasing the information about this second note that came in on February 6th or February 7th. They could be looking to manipulate coverage. It could be about power and psychological control and not money. I don't think this is about money. If it was about money, they'd be asking for $1 million.
Well, the opportunists are asking for money, be
Yeah.
it from the U.S., Africa, Eastern Europe, the same people that offer the Prince so and so who give us $10,000 and we'll give you 10 million, and they happen to have Bitcoin accounts set up. So we've been through all this before,
Yeah.
and this is really just a summary of what you and I have been talking about on various media outlets over the last week or so. And yeah, I think this abduction was done for a very personal reason
Mhm.
relating to Savannah. And I'm not saying she or her family had anything to do with it. It's some stalker, someone who admired her from afar, maybe met her once or twice, but she didn't follow through on emails or phone calls. And this person is upset, couldn't get her kids, went after her mom, and the woman died or didn't die. And again, kidnappings from the past, the victims have died, either babies in Lindbergh's case or Sidney Riso, the Exxon executive in 1992. But the kidnappers kept up, the ransom demands, and they sent, credit cards and notes and things like that, still
Mhm.
proving the child or someone was alive. If this was a real kidnapping, I mean, it sounds pretty heartless and cruel. But even if Mrs. Guthrie died, you could still send, pieces of her hair, and the DNA could connect, or a piece of jewelry that she's wearing, or even or cut out a piece of her pajamas she was wearing, and someone say, "Oh my God, that's the pajamas I gave her last Christmas," and that would be proof of life. But now they're not even offering proof of death. Show a still shot from this phone that they allegedly have of Nancy Guthrie that is from nowhere else on Facebook or anything else, and put some kind of a newspaper up behind her. They know the date, and that would prove a hell of a lot. But they're not even doing that. So this is the most poorly run kidnapping ever, if it in fact is a kidnapping,
I
which I
agree.
don't believe it is. And as I said before, the abduction, I'll give them credit; they got away with it, and including up 5 months now. But it was done for very personal reasons,
I agree.
possibly sexual, possibly to mess with Savannah Guthrie, and uh, and these notes are just written by opportunists. And I'll just end this on my part, Ray. Neither of us is inside the investigation. I don't have any sources. I don't think you do directly working this.
Mhm.
We're only working with what's on the outside, but reporting on what's on the outside is the best we can do, and that's certainly my opinion in that regard.
There's been a couple questions that I've received over and over again. I'm going to answer the first one. I'm going to throw the second one to you, Jim. The first one was, do you believe that Nancy is still alive? And my response has been, unfortunately, the communications raise serious concern about Nancy's survival. However, absent the physical evidence or direct confirmation, investigators are going to continue to treat all possibilities as open. The other question, Jim, do you think this case will ever be solved?
Um, there are very few kidnappings, first of all, in this country, but the ones that there have been in terms of kidnappings for profit, I always have to make sure our audience understands we're not talking custody cases or human trafficking or serial rapists taking someone out a window. This is someone who was stolen for money, which I don't think this is. But very few of them, if any of them, remain unsolved in this country. And other abductions, of course, not always easily provable. There may be suspects, but no one arrested. So, uh, yeah, they may get this lucky break someday. I'm hoping
Mhm.
someone listening to Cold Red or some of the other media hits we did, Ray, will listen to some of the things we and other people are saying and say, you know what happened. You saw the pre-offense behavior, Ray, and post-offense behavior you and I put out there months ago. Sit back and look at what was going on in January with some maybe odd person in your life, and certainly in February with some odd person. Certainly after that video was released, look at that and who has clothing like that, mask and wears, a holster, all those things, and make that phone call. You're gonna get a lot of money for it if you do, because the reward is still out there, and it doesn't mean you're involved in this. So, Ray, to answer that question, I think yes, it just takes the right person somewhere to come up with it. And like you said, I'm still hoping it's unlikely Mrs. Guthrie is alive. But if I was in that investigation, I would be handling every lead like I'm not. It's not a recovery mission. It's a rescue mission. In other words, you're looking to actually get her back alive. But with her heart condition and other physical ailments, we all know that is maybe a bit unrealistic.
I agree, Jim. I agree. Well, I think that's going to be a wrap for us here at Cold Red today. Jim, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Just a kind of a quickie here on the update, if you will, of the Nancy Guthrie case. So we'll be back on our regular time slot this week on Tuesday with another interview regarding the Lindsay Buziak homicide in Canada about 18 years ago, and moving forward with that. So everyone, thanks for listening, watching this episode of Cold Red. Please like us and subscribe to us, follow us, check out our blog site and our website, coldredpodcast.com. Thanks to Matt McLaughlin, Matt Robinson, our producers, Rick Schilling, our music coordinator, and everybody. Be safe out there, and see you next time on Cold Red.